Oh, well, welcome.
Thank you. Oh, cheers.
Cheers.
Good to see you.
Thanks for coming in, man. I appreciate it. I was looking through your book, which I don't know if you recall, but you gave it to me for my birthday.
Did I? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Dylan. Hope you find reading this useful and enjoyable. Cheers, Russell.
Fantastic.
How's that?
Look at that. And who'd believe that's me?
You look the exact same. which was I had a really interesting experience going through this again, man, because I think I was like 22 when you gave this to me. Different stage of life.
Yeah.
I hadn't really read any books or listened to any podcasts, anything like that. And it was I didn't really know any of the people that you were talking about. And then over the past like 8 years, it was interesting seeing like suggested podcasts like Tim Ferriss and Ben Greenfield and all the books that you've suggested. I was like, wow, that's crazy, because that's like a big trajectory of kind of what I've followed.
It's starting to sound a little bit like my father.
Yeah.
When I got the very first hot off the press copy, so the pre-release copy came to me this is what your book will look like when it's on the shelves. I went, that's fantastic, but I will never hear the end of it if I don't give this to my father and let him know he got the very first copy.
Yeah.
And my father lives in Adelaide, so when I was next in Adelaide, I said, look, Dad, how about this? He's like, oh, you bought me a present. I said, yeah, it's my book. He goes, and then he did what I just did. Was that you? I'm like, yeah, you've written a book. Oh, who'd have known that you could write a book? I said, well, yeah, I'm an expert in my field, Dad. He's like, oh. I said, let me know what you think of it. He goes, oh, I'm not going to read it.
Was he impressed?
Yeah, but the reply, I'm not going to read it.
Really?
Yeah, so
why is that?
Listening to you say, I hadn't read many books, but I have now, you've come a long way. That's good.
I was actually really like cool experience, like going through it again and just realizing where you're taking lots of this knowledge from and then adding your own knowledge on. And it really made me think that even though we've known each other for such a long time, I don't fully know what you do really. Like how would you describe what you do and your skill set?
A lot of people, everyone likes to console themselves and go, oh, Russell, he's into safety.
Safety.
Or he does risk. Now here's a really interesting thing. According to ChatGPT,
oh yeah,
I asked ChatGPT the other day because I thought this question might come up. Who is Russell Boon? So here's the official answer, straight out the mouths of ChatGPT. Try to contain your laughter. Russell Boon is one of Australia's preeminent emergency management specialists.
It's good that ChatGPT knows who you are.
Yeah, that's true.
So an emergency management specialist.
So what is that? Drawing upon all the life experience and previous roles and jobs and everything that I've had, which we'll probably get into, I consult to large organisations and or large infrastructure on what would they do if things go wrong. Now, everybody jumps straight to, oh, yeah, well, what do we do if the place catches fire? Oh, so you do evacuations, Russell? You go, yeah, among other things. But in all honesty, the last thing that's going to happen to a modern high-rise building or a modern sporting stadium or a Westfield or a suburban shopping centre that's of size and modern with circuit breakers, sprinkler systems, smoke detectors, all the mod cons that makes living in Australia, a first world nation, lovely.
Yeah.
Is it catches fire.
Not high up the list of things that happen?
It's not high up the list anymore. Like if this were somehow a podcast in the 1970s, a television interview or something like that, then yeah, sure, I'd be sitting here smoking a cigarette or something like that because that was what people did. You smoked inside shopping centres or at the office. You didn't have circuit breakers. You had fuses. You were only just learning about this thing called occupational health and safety.
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So, of course, when we look back on, okay, where has health and safety come from? There were a few buildings that caught fire. Some people were injured, some people lost their lives, people lost businesses. So we need some fire safety. We need better construction codes. And, it just grows from there. So fire engineering has engineered modern high-rise buildings, apartment blocks, things like that, to the point where they've done their job. Fire is one of the last emergencies you'll have. Now, that's not to say you won't get a rubbish bin catch on fire, or the photocopier doesn't have a short circuit and you get a small fire. But the days of the classic towering inferno.
The whole thing just catching up.
Yeah. And, we're open to comments in the comments section. I'm sure you'll see plenty of people go, oh, yeah, but what about that skyscraper fire in Dubai the other week? Or what about the Sheffield Tower in England? Or the hint is always in that last bit, in Dubai or in overseas location X.
Oh, so there's different standards and
different
protocols.
Building codes all around the world. Japan has some of the highest. That's why you don't often see high-rise or shopping centre fires in Japan. They're all engineered with earthquakes in mind and everything like that. Australia has some pretty good codes. South America, not so much historically.
So what's if that's like, I guess people lean towards those really catastrophic things happening. What's high up on the list of things that do actually happen?
It sounds like that would sell itself to my clients. So right now it's 2024 and we've recently had an incident in Sydney in the Westfield.
Yeah, what do you make of that?
Man going berserk with a knife. It's a mental health issue, and all the experts have come out and sort of put the pieces together, and unfortunately it's had some pretty dire results. So you would think with that, people would be open to, okay, well, we really need to have a little bit of a look at work health and safety in this particular workplace or this particular building, but around an active armed offender, somebody that is mobile and using a weapon of some sort to randomly injure strangers or take revenge on an organisation or vent their frustration as a form of protest, whether that's just damaging things or hurting people. Some of the pushback from some of my clients, that's going to worry people. It's going to scare people.
If they try and prepare themselves for this.
Yeah, you would think so. You'd think my phone would be running hot with, we need to run some sort of exercise like this or anything like that. So it's a little bit of a balance. People are not wanting to cause any stress to their people.
So is it by acknowledging it that it's a thing, by enacting protocols?
Depends on who's really asking me to come in and train.
Yeah.
Now, as it happens, I look after Westfield in Victoria, and they do actively train their staff on the events that happened in Bondi, which reaped its rewards. You heard retailers saying, we weren't exactly sure. There was people running around screaming and everything. We invited them into the shop, rolled our shutters, turned the lights out, sought safety in the change rooms or the rear storeroom. That's not something they just made up. That has been trained into the retailers. And pat on the back for Westfield that they have tackled those sort of situations, gang violence, mental health issues, various other sorts of weird things that go on in public spaces.
It's like, how do you prepare for something like that? It's such a renegade sort of circumstance.
Every circumstance, even if it's the same, it'll be different.
Yeah.
The same with, if we go back to just fire, you can say, okay, if the event of our workplace catches fire, you do this. But even if you have a fire one week and a fire the next week, it's going to be similar but different. Different location, different time of day, different staff will be there. It grows to a larger size before someone discovers it.
So it can end up being a completely different experience.
And basically that is the theme of Think, Decide, Act, the book.
That
starts to go, well, hang on, if we know what that emergency is. It's simple. You just do this, 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 and this. Except for when it's that slightly bit different. It's a different time of day, different time of year. It's raining when you try and do this, this, and this.
And it's not like you can create a specific plan for every possible circumstance. Like trying to teach that, I can imagine it would be impossible or would take forever.
So there's a reason my organisation, when I started, or my company, when I started it, I called it Capacity Building Emergency Management. And I went, actually that's quite clever, because it could be capacity building emergency management, in that we're building capacity, or it's capacity building emergency management because it's for buildings. So play on words, say it however you want, and most people just say, so you work for capacity. Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
So that's where I've ended up, is doing that for large organisations, trying to look at an all hazards, all risks approach.
It seems like a pretty niche area
very niche
to get into. Like, are there many people like yourself running things like this?
There is, by and large. The majority of people in this scene have to have experience from somewhere to bring to the table. So you'll find ex-military, ex-paramedics, police, fire, ambos.
Frontline sort of things.
The frontline workers that can draw upon their experience and go, okay, I have been there. Now, when I was working my former company, which was not a company I owned, I just was a manager for them, I was in charge of recruiting. And what I found was finding staff with the right mix of personable skills, teaching and coaching skills, presentation and public speaking skills, and that life experience and emergency management skills was actually very difficult.
Did they not always go hand in hand?
No.
It's because of temperament?
Well, essentially it turned out very easy to get hold of ex-fireys, ex-coppers or whatever. But that notion of not wanting to scare people but train them, teach them, encourage them so they are prepared for when shit happens, can't be done by telling stories. Oh, mate, this place catches fire. There's smoke everywhere. You don't want to be here. I'll tell you, there's the door. You need to be out. Well, is that training? No, that's just kind of trying to build your own ego because you've been there and eaten smoke before and you know how scary it is. Look at me. How tough am I?
I see. Okay.
You go, no, that's not going to work.
But not necessarily helpful.
No, not at all. So, innovator me, I thought, actually, maybe it's easier to hire a teacher and give them some emergency management experience than it is to hire an emergency manager and try and teach them how to teach adult learning principles, coaching principles, public speaking, et cetera, et cetera. No, it was easier the other way around. I hired someone whose presentation skills and teaching skills were fantastic.
Yeah.
But once the audience worked out the biggest emergency they'd ever managed was a leaky biro.
Yeah, because there's only one way to get that experience, right? And unless you put someone in the firing line to some degree. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that comes first.
Yeah. That plan backfired, and so it's just a case of coaching people with real world experience. And look, that's not to say that great presenters and people with vast experience aren't out there. There's a lot of them. It's just when you're running business, you need to source them and find them from somewhere.
And then, so you got into this through was your first job firefighting? Like, is that what got you into, maybe not first job?
No, we really want to rewind.
Like, I'm really interested on how you go from, I guess, early days into firefighting into what you're doing now, because that transition is probably what a lot of people would like to have done with their life, you know, like get experience and then become independent. And there's no, I guess, set out way that people actually do it.
Yeah. And
get that experience, like real world experience.
Yeah. Well, look, I'll be honest. If we were to rewind the clock, I left school after year 11. I guess I can say I was an incredibly average student. Not fantastic. One or two subjects I was great at. Quite a few I wasn't, but good enough. Could walk and chew gum. Yeah. And my parents said to me, "What do you want to do?" Answer, "Well, I don't know." Like all kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you are, 17, and I don't know. I'm kind of good at woodwork or metalwork or plastics. Not too bad at graphic design and art. So I thought, maybe. Now, this is pre-computer days. So, we're going back. 1979, I think.
Glory days.
Yeah. I'll be a graphic artist, design advertising brochures and wall posters and things like that. And fortunately, my father knew the dean of an arts college in Adelaide. We were living in Adelaide at the time. And we took some of my graphics work to him. He looked at it and said, "Actually, you're pretty damn good." I went, "Fantastic. This is off to a good start." He said, "But let me just be really honest with you. Getting into this game, the graphic design field, it's not how good you are. There's hundreds of people that are as good as Leonardo da Vinci or name any other artist."
Yeah, right.
Oh, he said, "It's not what you can do, but who you know."
Good lesson.
Wow, okay. Thank you for being honest with me, which is probably a little bit brutal for a 17-year-old because it's like, that's it. That's the end of you. So I applied for a few apprenticeships and managed to get an apprenticeship as a fitter and turner. So I'm a fully qualified fitter and turner by trade. So there's 4 years of my life spent machining steel with lathes and grinding machines and working on mechanical bits and pieces and everything.
Yeah, right.
So,
okay.
and then once I graduated as a fully qualified fitter and turner, I worked a year or two and I bumped into a friend of mine and he said, "Oh, what are you up to now?" I said, "Oh, I'm doing all this maintenance fitting, so it's repairing of machinery." And he said, "Oh, yeah, are you enjoying it?" I said, "It's okay, pays the bills." He said, "Well, let me ask you a question. What job can you do 2 days a week, have 6 days off and get paid about $30,000 a year more than a tradesman?" I have no idea, but I want it. Yeah, sign me up. He goes, "It's fire brigade." I said, "Really? 6 days off?" He said, "Yeah, 6 days off." He said, "Here's how it works. You do 2 10-hour days, say Monday, Tuesday. Then the following 2 days you have off, but you work those nights. So you do 2 14-hour nights, and then you have 4 days off. And so that's an 8-day roster on a 7-day week. So the following week you start on Tuesday. So you do day shift Tuesday, day shift Wednesday, late night or all night, Thursday, all night, Friday night. Then you have Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday off and start on Wednesday.
It just keeps rolling.
And it just keeps rolling ad infinitum even to this day."
Yeah, right.
I went, "This is pretty good." He said, "It's really hard to get into though. It's the most sought after job in Adelaide. Thousands of people apply for very few positions." I went, "Oh, you never know unless you give it a go." And I told my parents at the time, and my dad went, "They won't accept the likes of you."
Really?
Now, again, that's another little dismissive thing, but that one fired me up. And I went, "Nah, I'll show you. I'm going to do this." And so I applied. There was 28 positions, and we started with 5,500 applicants. That got whittled down to 3.5 to take the beginnings of the various tests, written aptitude tests, physical tests, medical tests. Then you'd go into headquarters for the confined space training, the blackout or testing. Testing at heights. Are you scared of heights? You just don't know it. So they put you on a ladder. You had to climb up a ladder to 40 odd feet and then lean out and touch something just to prove that, you're comfortable with heights.
So they're just pushing your boundaries, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And then they put what's known back then as a bunker coat, so the big tunic, the firefighting tunic on each candidate, put a breathing apparatus on, but not actually connected to a face mask. So they put the face mask on and it's blacked out, but you were just breathing through the opening. It wasn't connected to the cylinder. And then they'd put you into an air conditioning duct on the ground. And the instructors could look into the air conditioning duct while you had to crawl through it and navigate your way through. And, of course, it's constrictive. You've got a tank on your back. You can't see what you're doing. And, that claustrophobic. And, of course, they then would make sure that your tank gets caught on a piece of rope that's suspiciously dangling down. You would find you go down to a dead end and now you've got to somehow crawl backwards in this 18-inch by 18-inch funnel and then find your way out and everything like that. So do everything to sort of stress you and make you frustrated.
So that process must just weed out most people.
It certainly brought it down to the final 28, and lo and behold, good luck for me. I was one of the 28. So.
28 out of 5,000.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. Far out.
It was. I was incredibly proud. And from then you go and do 14 weeks basic training, which is your classic Army-esque style police academy basic training, the short haircuts, the lots of marching up and down the square, the training as to all the equipment, how a fire pump works, how to engage the truck to go from being a truck to now running the pump, how to gauge how much water you're using or you need, how to pump water to heights and work out how many extra kilopascals you have to pump at to give the man that's at the branch 700 kilopascals.
I've never heard the term kilopascals before.
Water pressure. Pounds per square inch?
Yeah, right.
Okay, so...
I feel like I just haven't heard the term pascals. I've always just seen it abbreviated.
Oh, well, we even got into, so if there is a nuclear disaster of some sort, big or small, so radioactive leak at a hospital through to, nuclear war, I suppose, and things are radioactive, and you say, right, I've suddenly noticed my house is radioactive. Better call the emergency services. Oh, it's not the ambulance, and I'm not sure what the police would do. Oh, it's the fire brigade. So we even did nuclear physics and learned all about, if you don't know what kilopascals are, let's go with microsieverts. You have forms of radiation. And don't worry, I was the same. I'm like, a microsievert, okay. Because, of course, if there is an emergency and you, the general public, are thinking, gee, I don't know who to call, it's nearly always the fire brigade.
You cover everything else.
Pretty much, yeah. So
you must have come across some pretty intense experiences throughout that time. How 20 years?
Yeah. It's actually about 23. There was a blurry bit right at the end of my career where I had come to Melbourne and spent a year or two here. Unfortunately, my mother got very sick. I returned to Adelaide. Fire service found that I was back and offered to bring me back in for another year or two while Mum unfortunately passed away. So then there was nothing holding me to Adelaide. I then retired from the fire service and came back to Melbourne.
Yeah, right.
So, yes.
Sounds like an intense job, man.
It is. It's and you ask anyone in any fire service, it will be long periods of nothing, interspersed with brief periods of absolutely everything. So there are times where you'll go and do a 10-hour day or a 14-hour night, or maybe do a double shift, 24 hours, and you don't go to a single thing. And you go, oh, okay, so while away the day, what do I do now? I drink my 10th cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Fortunately, during the week, there's drills to be had, there's station routine, there's a range of things that will keep you occupied. You do get your own free time, so mostly play some sports or go out in the gym or read a book or what have you.
Then you got to be prepared for
and
action.
Then there's those nights, and they always fall on days, hey, it's Saturday tomorrow and I've got a wedding or a child's birthday party or something like that, but I got night shift. I'll be home at 8 after night shift. And when you know it, you get to the station at 6 o'clock, 1800 hours, and by 18:30 you're in the truck going to your first gig. Then somebody's got a wheelie bin on fire that you detour on the way back to the station to fix that, and then you do this, and then you end up having dinner about 10 p.m. from the only pizza shop that's open. And then while you're halfway through your pizza, you get another call because someone's hedge is on fire, and then there's a car prang down the road, and you're over there. And long story short, you've been to 6 or 8 jobs that night.
Yeah.
And you go, really? The one night that I would have preferred to be calm was the night we were running around doing maybe just silly little things or maybe some major things. And you're right, in 20-odd years, I've been to some fairly substantial emergencies. Murphy's Law, so to speak.
It's bound to happen. Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's another little motto, if you get one call, you'll get 2.
Just a universal law somehow happens?
Yes.
Far out. How did you deal with coming across these, I guess, extreme situations for the first time? I guess any frontline worker has to deal with those first times where they see some brutal shit. And how do you mentally deal with those things?
Yeah. I think probably first and foremost, everybody deals and reacts with it different. Across the board, what you will find, and I'm going to just speak maybe through my hat here, in the militaries where we know they will see the worst of the worst, even if it's just disaster relief or whether it's war. But fire services especially is the use of black humour and matter-of-factness to not let the dire consequences soak into you while you need to perform. So a level of detachment, but done with I say black humour. If I can illustrate with a little lightweight story, so nothing graphic, so that we're still child-friendly, if anybody's listening.
I doubt children will be listening to this podcast, so you can go where you would like.
We went to a house fire, and when we got there, it turned out that somebody had done the classic faux pas of not cleaning the lint out of their dryer. Now, that is the leading cause
Ellen
of
always
dryer
tells me to do it.
Always do it.
Yeah, right.
I know it seems absolutely trivial, like, oh, yeah, all right, so why are you being so pedantic? But no, it's true.
Yeah,
okay.
There you go.
So just open that thing, scrape it, chuck it in the bin, put it back in, and you're off to the races. But anyway, the laundry had caught fire, and to the average homeowner who has never seen a portion of their house on fire, it's pretty confronting. A lot of people get really freaked out, really scared, can't even remember 000, as easy as it is.
Yeah.
And it's fortunately, the neighbour notices that their neighbour's house is on fire and, that must be what all the screaming's about, and phones the fire service. So we've rushed round. It's only a dryer with the clothes and a small portion of the laundry and what have you. So, just another night at work for us. Nothing dramatic at all. So we dealt with that, and our station officer of the night was interviewing the lady about, well, what time did you put the dryer on? We need these details for the fire report. So you've got a fire report to take to your insurance company. And myself and another firey called Paul was basically just taking out the burnt clothing and cleaning up the water and everything that we'd put everywhere throughout her laundry and passageway. And as we were outside, unfortunately within earshot of this lady, Paul held up a pair of sneakers, sand shoes, and they're smoking. And that dry black humour, he looks at me as he carries them past and says, "Hey, who owns these? Carl Lewis." Now, if you're wondering who Carl Lewis is, he's a multi-gold medal winner at the Olympics about the time when this incident happened. Now, we all had that sort of giggle, not laugh out loud, hilarious, but it's that sort of humour that lifts everybody's spirits to.
You got to stay on top of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, why this story, as small as it is, even sticks in my mind, of course, the homeowner overheard that comment and burst into tears. So once we were back at the station, we were hauled up in front of the station officer. Comments like that are not appreciated, which we appreciated, and to just, keep your opinions to yourself when you're near the general public. So,
yeah, right. You got to do what you got to do, right?
You got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
And yes, so from small stories like that, you can imagine that it's a similar sort of approach to horribly burnt bodies, car accident victims, everything like that. Not that we make a joke about them.
Of course.
But you need to keep it light for the sanity of the team dealing with that. And then when you get back to the station, you're all free to sit there and go, holy moly, that was shit.
Yeah.
I really didn't like, this aspect or the smell or the amount of blood, or it really freaked me out. So there's that support amongst peers that encourages people to rely on friends to get through a situation.
Because you've got to do sort of anything you can, right, to not feel in certain moments. You've got to turn that
Absolutely.
part off, otherwise it can be crippling, I can imagine.
Yeah. That sort of does stick with you after a while, hardens you. Because, yes, I've been told now when my wife's expressing some concern about something, I go, harden up, deal with it.
Yeah.
Which is nice, good advice from me. That doesn't go down too well with non-emergency service workers.
Because I guess you have to go through a lot of practice turning that part off a lot of the time.
Yeah. And keeping a sarcastic approach or trying not to see comedy in a bad situation, but remain a little lighter about it so you can function and lead. It's an interesting skill.
It's an extreme job, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And so throughout this time, you deal with a lot of different emergency scenarios, and you somehow build up a skill base or a capacity to be able to advise on like such a big scale, like skyscrapers. Like, what connects the dots there?
Wow. Going back to what I was saying before about the last thing you're going to go to is a fire, and yet I've basically thrown fire as many examples. In a domestic setting, we're not talking about houses that are sprinklered. It was in the early days of smoke detectors, where it's a bit of a luxury rather than really quite a mandatory component of everybody's house nowadays. But we started to see, and we were one of the first fire services in Australia to be called South Australian Metropolitan Fire Service. And then Western Australia came on board with what we call the WAFers, Western Australian Fire Service.
Yep.
But it was some decade or so later that Melbourne Fire Brigade and New South Wales Fire Brigades sort of acknowledged what the rest of the fire services and that they themselves were experiencing, in that you're going less and less to fires and more to entrapments, motor vehicle accidents, oil spills, structural collapse, medical episodes.
Oh, so it bleeds out into all the other things.
And so you start to go back to what I was saying about, well, who do you call for this particular, fire service, because they are the rescue guys, they are the fire guys, they are the car accident specialists, they are the oil spill cleanup guys. We got called to a koala up a tree one year.
To go save it.
Okay, so, who do you call? Look, there's a koala up that tree. And we were responding, lights and sirens. So, I think it was a Sunday afternoon from memory. Koala up a tree. And we're having the radio. No, this is not April the 1st. What's going on here? Oh, yeah, you'll see when you get there. And when we got there, there's lots of people standing around looking at this koala up a tree. But why we'd actually been called was this tree was on a main road in a suburb south of Adelaide.
Oh, okay.
And the residents had feared that this koala would come down at night, try and cross the road and be hit. And we all know how fuzzy and cuddly, lovely koalas are.
Of course.
They've called the RSPCA, who have come round and gone, yep, we'll relocate the koala. But he's like 50-odd feet up there in the air. Who's got a big ladder on a Sunday? Fire service. So, so we turn up. All right, yeah, okay, we'll throw a specific sort of ladder that only our station had at the time, in our area anyway, a 464 ladder. Now,
A 464 ladder.
464 ladder. Now, it takes 4 people to operate it because it weighs 98 kilos.
Oh.
And it's 46 feet tall. I can't remember what it was in metres, 13.4 metres, something like that. So we've put this up against the tree, we've extended it right up, 50 feet, and it just reaches to where this koala is, and all eyes look at me. Well, you're the smaller guy, Russell. Up you go. So I've gone up, got my helmet on, I've got my tunic, I've got my gloves, because the RSPCA have said to us, look out, once you grab him, you're going to get him in this sack because, he's not going to enjoy it.
Vicious.
Yeah, apparently. So, so up this ladder I go, and the thing sees me coming, starts creeping out onto a thinner and thinner branch. I've got right to the top of the ladder. Now I'm hanging onto the tree with my feet on the ladders. This is not health and safety. And all the kids and all the parents are around the bottom of the tree, and I'm looking down on them all, and they're all like, wow, the hero fireman. I'm like, reaching out, trying to get this koala. In the end, I've had to step 1 foot onto a branch, hanging onto a tree with 1 foot on the ladder. So we're really
You're pushing
the rules here.
Are you latched on at this point? Oh, okay.
Okay.
So if you fall from there, it's not good.
No, not good. I was wearing a helmet. So anyway, I've managed to grab this fluffy, cuddly, lovely koala that's just turned into this ferocious, growling tornado of claws, and it's just started ripping into my tunic and arm. And even to this day, I've still got a big hook scar up here.
No shit.
Not all that visible anymore. Now I'm
So they are vicious.
Holy moly. Yeah. Anyway, I've stumbled a bit. I've got this thing that's just going berserk. Anyway, I drop it. And from my point of view, I'm looking down and I just see this koala go down. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. The whole crowd. I'm watching this koala fall. And then as it hits the concrete bends in around it. I'm like, what? I stopped and focused on what it was. RSPCA had spread out a big blanket. It happened to be the same colour as the concrete they were standing on. So it's fallen into this blanket, and they've all rushed it, got it into a sack, and happy ending. But
Far out.
A kind of a weird story. So, yeah, fire brigade, you get up to all sorts of things.
So you see a lot of things going on. Far out.
Yeah.
So your experience just keeps growing as time goes on.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily getting
always
pigeonholed.
Somebody bringing something new to the table. Russell, what do we do about this? Oh, we had this incident the other day, and this is how it, played out. Nobody really knew what to do, and some of them you sort of go, oh, well, you just do this.
Yeah.
Oh, I wish we'd thought of that at the time. And then there's other ones where you go, oh, okay, that's a new one on me. Let me put a little bit of thought into that. So from the fire brigade, 2003, I think it was, my wife had been offered a job in Melbourne. So I wound up the fire brigade career and we moved back to Melbourne. We had spent some time, late 90s here. And I applied for a job with a big risk management company that was doing emergency management and was successful. And so I started work with them, and it started just before Christmas. So everybody had Christmas holidays except me. I was the new employee. So I was sitting in a largely unoccupied office with one or two other workers that were pushing through Christmas. And they said, you better familiarise yourself with all the procedures that we've been doing. And so I started reading their emergency procedure manual or the suite of manuals that they would give to clients. They tailor them a little bit and then give to clients. You're a multi-storey building, you have this version of the manual, and now we tailor it to be specific to that high-rise building.
Okay, yep.
I started reading it. I'm like, what a load of crap. This is just so rudimentary, and I mentioned it to the manager of the company that owned the company I was working for. So it was sort of a combined thing. We were a division, even though we were a separate company, sort of a division of a larger risk management group.
Yeah.
And I said, this is rubbish. He goes, you think you can write anything better? I can write something better in my sleep. Now, this is fire brigade swagger. No idea about corporate etiquette. So, I told it like it is. He goes, well, maybe you should then. I went, okay, I will. And so they issued me a laptop. I had nothing else to do during Christmas. Don't know anybody in Melbourne, so away we go. And rejuvenated the manual, gave it to the managing director of this company when she came back from Christmas holidays, and she went, wow, okay. And fortunately she didn't go, well, who do you think you are? And it became the new suite of emergency procedures across a more diverse range of emergencies, not just focused on fire and evacuations and alarms. And whilst I was working with that company, I ended up going to Swinburne University.
Okay, yep. And
trying to formalise my previous qualifications or skills, in that in the 80s and 90s, anyone with the majority of government jobs, be it a nurse, well, not so much a nurse, but a fire service, maybe even a police officer, you were trained to do the job, whether it's management, whether it's finances, whether it's a station budget or something like that. So when you leave, you can do all those things, but you're qualified for none of it. So applying for jobs, have you got a frontline management degree? You go, no, but I've managed a $1 million budget for a fire station. I've commanded 8 men under pressure. I've done this, I've done that. I was in fire cause investigation for a while. If you haven't got qualifications.
Really?
Yeah. So I thought I'd try and do something that built upon the life experience, and the best thing I could come across at the time was a graduate certificate in disaster management.
In disaster management?
Disaster management. And you're like, is that really a thing?
Yeah. I didn't know that was a thing.
No, I didn't know it was a thing. So it turned out that Swinburne University at Hawthorn at the time was housing the International Disaster Management Centre. And so for the next 3 years, part-time, I was in there looking at humanitarian large-scale disasters and how you can apply that emergency thinking and planning to not just this building, this stadium, this shopping centre, but to this council or shire, this country, this region. And you're looking at,
you're looking at like tsunamis and
tsunamis and how to recover and rebuild afterwards. Is it a case of just rebuilding the buildings? No, it's a holistic approach again to harnessing community leaders and looking at diverse groups within the community that's impacted. What do they need to get life back to normal? Because there's two things in any major disaster that seem to be impervious to whatever the disaster is. They are the things that will pop up first in the recovery phase in any impacted disaster or population. Organised crime, prostitution.
Really?
Yeah. And you go, great.
That's the first thing.
The two things we really could do without, they are the two businesses that get themselves established first, because organised crime, there's law and order if what's left of law and order is focused on rebuilding, recovering their capabilities to be policing and police officers. And prostitution, women that are single or with facing no other option to somehow support family and perhaps an injured spouse. What have they got when they've got nothing to start a business or run a business with? A little bit of that.
That's where they got to go.
The world's oldest profession.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's interesting that they're the two things that come.
I know. It's sad but true. One of the other interesting things is, and we saw this during the pandemic to prove this is true, is which segment of the community would you think is the most resilient during adversity, whether it be a drought, whether it be a war, whether it be an earthquake, and we've lost a lot of significant infrastructure.
Which segment of the community would be the most resilient?
Would get through it the easiest. Pregnant pause here while I give you some thinking time and some drinking time from me.
And this is people that haven't been injured directly.
If it
was happened here.
If we had a serious earthquake and now we've got a serious disruption to electricity supplies, sporadic water, sewerage isn't going and water isn't coming. A lot of housing is either structurally damaged or completely destroyed. Which segment is it? Youth?
Yeah,
you're young and fit and strong and get through this.
20 to 40-year-olds or 20 to 30-year-olds who are fit and able.
Yeah.
That's one option. Children, they kind of bounce off
they bounce
stuff.
around. They sort of go, wow, that was scary.
I'll be honest with you, I have no idea.
No, I must admit I got this wrong at university too. It's the elderly.
Really?
Yes. So whilst they may be more physically frail, they've got the life skills and they've been there and done it before. So you think about your grandfather. Did he have a microwave? Probably not.
Yeah, they didn't have so they can do without.
Did he have a telly to keep a bridge? No, probably not. Probably had a radiograph or something like that. So they lived through the Depression, the First World War, the Second World War, and various other things that have informed upon them how you can do without modern modcons. And so by and large, they will be impromptu leaders, whether they step up to the plate and say, listen, I know what to do, or whether they just do it and others sort of go, well, you seem to be doing okay, you're not complaining. Oh, well, that's because you build and start a fire like this and you boil water like this. And, oh, is that how it's done? And conversely, the most non-independent, helpless portion of community in the event of large-scale disaster is single mothers, young single mothers, because, again, they've never not been able to heat the baby's milk up in the microwave. 30 seconds, there you go. They've never not been able to go to the pharmacy to get NyQuil or whatever, whooping cough medication.
Especially if they're already looking after kids and they're trying to balance all that at the same time.
Yeah, and, you know, that's not to blame them because, let's face it, nearly every day of our lives we've always been able to get what we want.
Yeah.
It's only when disaster strikes, and we saw it with our pandemic, suddenly I can't go to work, I don't have the disposable income that I did have, and et cetera, that we saw various portions of the community starting to complain or buck the trend or protest even. So,
like we saw that a lot in all areas.
Plus 20-odd years of dealing with chaos put together, plus what I was learning about the corporate world and coming to grips with the National Construction Codes, Building Codes of Australia back then, and starting to see how emergency management or emergency training could actually be or morph into emergency management. So we're not going to just train you drill style. Hear this noise, run out that door. Now, when you get to the park, line up in the order of height or alphabetical order and do a roll call. just like we're at school.
Yeah.
But we're not at school anymore. We're all adults and working for a living. And there's more than just fires. So in my business now, I've got quite a few hard and fast rules that I often sprout. And it was only my wife that sort of went, "You're like Gibbs on NCIS." I'm like, "Really? My hair is that bad?" She said, "No, not the hair. You've got these rules. I hear you when you're talking to people." I said, "Oh." She said, "Look, even I know. Rule number 1, not every emergency is a fire, and it's not always solved by evacuating." I said, "Oh," and that made me sit down and have a look at, yeah, these things repetitively come up, because even after now 30 years of talking to people from all walks of life in all organisations, I'm still answering the very same questions as I was in the 90s.
So still the same sort of framework.
Yeah.
That you can fall back on.
It's gobsmacking at times. You know, so my building has 2 emergency tones. You go, yes, they test it every Friday. And they announce this tone is the alert tone. You would not normally evacuate when you hear this tone, beep, beep, beep. This tone is the evacuation tone. If you hear this tone, you would commence evacuating. Whoop, whoop, whoop. People sit in their buildings for years and they hear that. And then when the tones actually sound, "Oh, I don't know what they mean." You know, and I get emails, you know, "What does the beep, beep, beep mean? What does the whoop, whoop, whoop mean?" You go, "Look, it's not different in your building to your local Westfield or your sporting stadium. It's a national standard."
So these are the same sounds.
If you
that
live in
are
a
happening
high-rise
everywhere.
apartment and you have an activation of the fire detection system, it will commence with the alert tone. Now, there's 1 or 2 odd or unique circumstances where it may go straight to the evacuation tone. But by and large, the tones will sound pretty much the same. You will have like a truck reversing beep, beep, beep noise, and that is the alert. Something somewhere has happened. And until you know what and where, if you're not in any immediate danger, it might be better to wait for instructions or stay where you are. And then the whoop, whoop, whoop noise, like a submarine diving tone.
Oh, yep.
That's like, "Hey, exit, it's over here, go." Now, research back in the early noughties, I think they call it, start to indicate that alarms are ambiguous. They let you know something somewhere's happened, but how am I supposed to react? And again, the fortunate thing of being in Australia was that we recognised this research, that alarms are ambiguous. Alarms will be much more effective if they're accompanied by, well, now you're alerted, you're alarmed, what are you supposed to do? So now our national standard throughout the country is that the alert and the evac tone, the warning tones, will be accompanied by a voice instruction. So now when you're at the MCG or your local shopping centre and there's a fire alarm, you will have, you know, beep, 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 warning, emergency, stand by for instructions.
Yeah.
Is that what I'm supposed to do? And then the whoop, whoop, whoop happens. It will be emergency, evacuate now, evacuate as instructed, whoop, 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 evacuate as instructed.
So do you head into these buildings and like walk through the building and essentially assess the whole place for hazards?
Yes.
Essentially, it's like looking for all the shit that could possibly go wrong in that given place.
Yeah.
And begin building that framework from there.
Essentially looking at the structure of the building, because as architects get more and more clever and trying to make this building so much nicer and unique compared to the last building, we're getting all sorts of unusual things inside buildings, massive atriums, green walls, environmentally friendly different systems that recirculate air or water, everything you can imagine. And then also you mix that with the client's operating environment. So we're seeing this after pandemic is the flexible working environment. So a company that used to take up 10 floors in a high-rise building now, because everyone was at their desk every day, probably only needs 3 floors now because, let's face it, only 25% of employees are in the office at any given time.
Yeah.
So there's those sort of operating environments. And then also, what's the mix of the tenants in this commercial building? Is there lawyers and they practice family law? Does that bring a security situation to the building at large? Yeah, darn right you do, because
So you're assessing the demographic of...
Yeah, don't like an outcome of a judgment or a ruling or the service a lawyer has provided. Turn up with a knife or a firearm or threatening violence or a can of petrol or something like that. That's not just a risk to that tenant, but also a bit of a hazard to any other tenants in the building. You've got a mining company. It's only head office or the pay office or something, but hey, they're drilling on the Great Barrier Reef or something, and now there's activists wanting to come around and protest at the building because Company X is inside this building, or the whole range of different aspects of that. So you need to take all that into account. So it all just goes into one.
It's so much
mix.
to try and take into account.
So much. And then when we were involved in some overseas hostilities, we had, of course, the terrorism angle, hostile vehicles, bombs, bomb threats, suspicious packages, anthrax, powders, and various other chaos that you can think of. So
how do you begin trying to, because you can, if you know what you're doing, you can obviously create all of these systems and have an ideal way for them to work. But how do you actually teach that and help the people in the building integrate these things?
Teaching it to the people, okay, what do we do when we receive a suspicious package, or what do we do when we receive a bomb threat? Somebody phones us up and says, you've got an hour to get out of the building, it's going to blow up and what have you. There's some rigour and some basic principles about responding to situations such as that, and that is actually easy to teach people. The challenge is teaching it in a non-scary way, an informative way, and a way that the procedures stick. Because people are happy to come to, well, I'd like to think people are happy to come to training. Hope people find it interesting, but then will they remember it in a week's time? So rule number 2, okay, so going back to what my wife told me, you say all the time, rule number 2 is nobody cares about emergencies until they're in one.
Yeah.
Then suddenly this comes out of its holster and it never goes, why didn't I listen to what the guy said in training? Why didn't I pay attention to what they say over that PA speaker every Friday? Why didn't I look at the evacuation diagrams? Never that. It's, you never told me that they'd ring the alarms this long. You never said we could get a bomb threat. You never said the exit is over there. You never showed me where evacuation diagrams are. It's always somebody else's fault. And it just comes back to everyone doesn't really want to envisage the worst.
Yeah, is that what it is? Yeah, people don't want to take their mind down that path?
I think so. I think people are comfortable in the zone or the world that they know and can operate almost without thought in. And now think about this as a way of explaining that statement is, were you nervous when you were first learning to drive?
I'm sure I was.
No, I'm sure I was too.
Yeah.
I had my father sitting in the car, now let the clutch up slowly and there down the road. Yeah. Oh, no, too fast, too slow. Dad.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he was shitting bricks as well, because we're out on a public road and he's trying to teach me to drive. And now let's flash forward some 45 years for me and 20.
However long, 10 years since I started driving.
Now, when was the last time you left work or the gym late at night or something like that, and you're thinking about what happened at work today? You get in, you start the car and you back out and you're driving along And you're sort of like, yeah, when so-and-so said that to me in this meeting, I should have said this, or, oh, that's right, I've got to do this in the morning and everything like that. And before you know it, you're pulling into your driveway. And you get out, and just as you're walking up to the front door, you go, I don't even remember the drive home.
Yeah.
Yeah, or you've driven through a set of lights and then you suddenly look in the rearview mirror and go, was that green? Oh, we've all done it.
Yeah, you're just not aware.
Yeah, you're sort of aware.
I feel like that happens throughout daily life with almost everything.
There you go.
Yeah.
So this isn't us driving along going, what if someone comes out this side street? What's this person doing? Oh, there's somebody in my mirror. Oh, they're doing this. Oh, those lights green. It's now something that you have ultimate mastery of. You can almost do it without thinking because you've been doing it for years. It's not stressful at all anymore. You're enjoying this non-stressful activity to think about other things that are busying your mind. And that's most people's lives, is I'm busy here at work. I know how to work the computer and write this spreadsheet, this document, or I'm working this piece of machinery and manufacturing. Everything's going to plan. Why would I think about what if it doesn't, or what if something happens while I'm trying to do this? So unfortunately, I guess in a roundabout way, I'm the person that has to come along and kind of rattle the cage a little bit and just go, look, I'm not predicting doom and gloom. We're very, very lucky down this end of the planet and in this country that our police, intelligence services and everything do shield us from a lot of the world's ills that visit our TV screens every night. But other stuff can still go wrong. Natural hazards, cyclones, flooding, drought, disaster, mental health issues, again, as we've seen recently. So somebody's got to do it.
Do you think that we're unaware, like for the average citizen, do you think that we're unaware of
I think
the level of danger that happens?
Spectrum. It depends on your responsibility. And again, as a simile here, as a single person, bumble through life, what do I do this week? Oh, I'm surfing this weekend. I need to eat, pull into Kentucky Fried Chicken or whatever. You just do what you need to do. Not a care in the world. And I sometimes look back on those days because that was me. Yeah. Surfboard, I was either scuba diving or surfing. Right through to, now I've got myself a girlfriend. Have to be a little bit more aware when we go out for dinner, make sure I open the door for her or look after her welfare. Would you like a drink? Let's have dinner. So now I've extended my circumference of concern. Then we get married and have kids. Now you're in dad mode. You're on the lookout for every predator, drug dealer, accident waiting to happen, dangerous driver, and everything like that. So you've got a baby on board. And so you do sort of think broader and wider.
Yeah.
But each of us are different. I'm sure there's converse personality traits to either end of that little example.
And so you've managed to take all of these emergency crisis skills and turn them into applications for kind of personal development, day-to-day life, handling regular life situations, it seems. Do you do that professionally? Like, is that part of
how to make training for situations that are so removed from people's day-to-day work or lives and make it interesting is to incorporate aspects that are useful to them in everyday life. So, for instance, and this one's hilarious, so I have so much fun. I'll have a room of, say, 100 people that have either volunteered or been volunteered to be the office warden, so the emergency warden for their floor or their office. And so part of that means that in the event of an emergency, they will be the loud, gregarious, take charge person that goes, listen to me, I know what to do. I'm trained for this. So you do this, everyone listen here, come here, go there, do this, take control. So part of that is sort of public speaking under some extreme-ish circumstances.
Yeah.
So out of my 100 people in a lecture theatre or a classroom or training room, okay, who here loves public speaking? You could stand up at a wedding and give a speech, or you can give instructions to your colleagues. You know, you're a manager or a leader or something. So, yeah, just put your hand up if you love public speaking. And I'll stand on stage like this. Guess how many other hands go up?
Not many?
Not many. Out of 100, I might get 2.
I've heard it's quite a big fear for people, like getting up on
Absolutely.
stage. Pretty nerve-wracking for whatever reason.
But all I'm asking is you work in occupational health and safety in your building. There's you and the 10 other people in your division. You're the warden. So you're only going to have to talk to 10 people initially, and then as you gather with the finance section and the marketing division, and there's now 60 of you, you may just need to give some instruction. Can everybody move back, please? You know, can everyone come this way, please? Single file or whatever. That in itself is public speaking. It's giving instructions with a loud voice so that a crowd of people will now look at you and obey your instructions. And you go, great. So there's 2 people, 3 if we count me, but I'm not going to be here in an emergency, who can talk to a group of people, and 97 of you are a little bit scared. You know, I can't speak to some people. You go, great. This is not what we need in an emergency.
Yeah.
You need that person that stands up and goes, hey, everybody, just listen to me. This is not hard. I just need you to stop work, stand up, come this way. Can you all do that? Oh, maybe. So part of the training is going, okay, hang on a sec. Let me share with you a system that's going to turn you into a ad hoc, part-time leader who's capable of giving instructions to people under these circumstances. And I've developed just a few fun little activities and an acronym of things you need to master to be able to do this. And people go, oh, yeah, okay, I understand. That's all kind of easy. You go, yeah. And guess what? Next time they ask you to do a occ health and safety toolbox talk, this is your chance to practice those. You don't have to shout as loud as you would during an emergency because you won't have alarms going. But just remember, you know, your body position. Don't speak to the floor. If you have to, speak to people. If that puts you off, looking people in the eye, talk to the ceiling. Hey, everyone, can you listen to me? There's a reason they call it speaking up.
Yeah.
You know, rather than speaking to the floor, because this isn't a leader. Hey, everyone, follow me. I know what I'm doing. Are you ready to? No, you're going, hang on a second.
I'm not trusting their advice when I'm running out of a building.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we sort of bring a little bit of training that if they buy into it, they can go, actually, this isn't so much life skills, but here's a few other similes, skills, and what have you, I can use in other settings. And as we went through that started to lead me towards the notion that, hey, Russell, how come you know all this? How come you can just say, oh, that's simple, you just do this, and you just do that? And so that now we've gone full circle. That takes me back to the book. I sat down and went, okay, that is a really interesting thing to ponder. You can take a police, fire, ambos, emergency room doctor, nurse, all these people that deal with decisions that need to be made now. Possibly, like with the fire brigade, in circumstances where they've only just arrived. They didn't see what evolved and caused this car accident, this fire, this problem. And yet they jump out of the fire truck or the ambulance. They go, oh, you do this, we need to do that. Get this done, put this piece of equipment here. You go, that's a skill. And yet you may find that very same station officer in the aisle at Coles trying to pick up some groceries on the way home going, well, hang on a sec, here's a can of beans. Oh, that's what low salt. Maybe I should have. Oh, these are on special. Oh, but they're 4-bean mix and I think we needed black beans. So, they're Australian made and they're not, and they'll be standing there forever. And you go, how come you're an absolute whiz in life and death decisions under extreme circumstances where most people will melt, and yet you're having trouble choosing between tins of beans?
Why is that?
It's a very interesting thing. Fortunately, a greater mind than mine looked into this back in 1976, and his name was Dr. Gary Klein. Now, I've met Dr. Gary Klein. I studied his works in university, and he came to Australia and was presenting a forum, and I went along and met sort of a university hero. I'd read so many of his papers and research and everything like that. And he was looking at the human trait of making decisions under pressure. How do we get better at this? And he was initially looking at a military angle. And this was commissioned by the US military because now, again, I'm sure somebody will correct me in the comments section below. In 1974, I think, a Iranian airliner was passing near a US destroyer, a US Navy vessel in the Persian Gulf, and it was mistaken for an aircraft that was about to attack it, and the US destroyer shot it down.
Whoa.
International outrage. How on earth can you mistake an airliner for an incoming fast attack jet?
Yeah.
What was the decision process that went so horribly wrong for this to happen? And Dr. Klein was commissioned with investigating how can we refine military decision-making to be more accurate, more concise, better. And he interviewed across the military and wasn't getting any very satisfactory results. Everyone was a little bit different. Everyone made decisions differently. The Navy made decisions different to the Army, and so on and so forth. And so he then started to include the emergency services. He interviewed emergency room doctors. How do you know this person's been stabbed and not shot and now needs, blood transfusion and everything like that? And a lot of the answers all the time was, well, you just do.
It's just how it happens.
It's my training. I know, that this knife wound is here and the liver's just under it. He'll probably need this. Okay, this isn't really coming up with any usable information. Then he started looking at New York Fire Service and doing a few ride-alongs with the fire brigade, and just started asking station officers after fires, how did you know to send 2 men in through that door? How did you know to actually pull your men out before the roof and everything collapsed? And the interviewees really started waving a red flag at him as a psychologist and investigator of what he's trying to do, a research scientist.
Really?
In that they're going, you just do. I think it's ESP. Now, the first time you hear that, you laugh it off. Yeah, like ESP. So that's your opinion. Talk to the next station officer. Oh, well, I had this feeling that, that was the right move. I don't know, perhaps it's like ESP, something like that.
Like intuition.
Extrasensory perception. And, of course, to any research scientist, that's like, oh, come on.
That's way too metaphysical.
Yeah, this is, I can't put this in a paper. That's the end of my career.
Yeah.
So he really started to change the questions he was asking. And I'll cut this short and we'll jump right to the chase. It really turned out, and what Dr. Klein termed this is recognition-primed decision-making, in that no matter how chaotic, how new, or in disaster management wording, how novel, meaning never before happened or seen by you or by anyone, an airliner flying into a skyscraper perhaps, there will always be aspects of the aftermath or the event that is familiar, even though you've never seen that before. Okay, now, example here. How many offshore oil rig fires have you been involved in, Dylan?
None yet.
Me neither.
Yeah.
But if you were on an offshore oil rig and it caught fire, would you recognise it?
I know what a fire is.
There you go.
So that's a start.
Okay, it's the big orange thing.
Yeah.
It sort of gives off heat,
Yeah.
probably a lot of it. There's generally smoke,
Yeah.
and it's dangerous. So you actually know a lot about offshore oil rig finds.
So there's somewhere to start.
There's somewhere to start.
Okay.
Exactly. So even though neither of us have dealt with an offshore oil rig fire, there's aspects of it that we already recognise, wheels within the wheels, shall we say.
Okay.
So that little aspect of it, fire, how do you deal with that? How would we combat it?
Maybe with an oil fire, maybe not water. So I don't know.
Actually, you can use water, but
You can use water.
Let's roll with what do you use on a petroleum and oil fire? Oh, I might be quizzing you too far here.
What do you use?
Answer's foam.
Foam.
Foam. Oh, well done. You're
Perfect.
a legend. Fantastic. Okay. A foam firefighting agent.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, there are, if we were familiar with oil rig fires, probably a whole range of
That makes sense. Fire extinguisher. That was an easy one. You threw me a bone there.
There's probably, some expertise and equipment that deals with it specifically.
Yeah.
But us as the outsiders could deal with the portions of it we understand is dangerous enough to make a start.
Yeah.
Then we reevaluate how we're going. Oh, wow, we went and used water. It's not really that effective. In fact, it seems to be making it a little bit worse. Let's change what we're doing. How do we know that? Because we tried something. We made a decision and we acted.
So you're following this loop of action,
So that's
inquisition.
where we actually now take a little bit of a jump to another person that sort of interfaces with recognition prime decision making, this notion of no matter how unusual a situation, you will recognise aspects of it. And now we join it with a chap named Colonel John Boyd. Do you know him?
Never heard of Colonel John Boyd. I got to look him up. All right.
Okay. Because a lovely story about him. He was an air fighter ace in Korea. And when US losses in the air started to increase, he was one of the fighter pilots that was tasked with improving the caliber of US pilots and upskilling them. And what he actually found was that it's not so much just better aeroplanes. It's better training and better caliber of the pilots to make more informed decisions quicker than your opponent. And so he was instrumental, if you're an avionics, aviation expert and aficionado, the F-16 fighter has a very bubble-like canopy. It was one of the first fighter jets that gave 360-degree views around the pilot of what's going on. Quite often beforehand, the rear portion of the cockpit
Yeah,
was
I've seen
solid.
it all covered.
Yeah, so you could look forward and sideways and see what you're doing, but you couldn't really turn around and see what's behind you. Well, the F-16 was one of the first jets to change that on his advice, was that the pilot that could observe their surroundings could orient themselves to what's going on. Gee whiz, I'm in trouble. There's a MiG fighter jet behind me. Okay. They can then make a decision and take action faster than if you couldn't see it. That jet would appear out of nowhere, shoot you down, and you go, oh, yeah, there was somebody behind us. So that became known as John Boyd's OODA loop, O-O-D-A. OODA loop. Now, that's orient, observe, orient, decide, act.
Observe, orient, decide, act. Okay.
So I observe, there's my glass of wine. I now orient my hand. I decide to pick up the glass and action of drink. Very simplistic term compared to fighter jets. But once I've done that, I now look at the results of my actions, which brings me back the loop to, again, orient. Observe.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've taken action, now observe the outcome, orient ourselves to change or continue, make the decision, carry out the action. How's that going? Make more movement, decide, come back and observe.
So you can just keep
OODA
following this
loop.
process.
So now we know, we can see the wheels within the wheels. We know how to combat fire, even though the rest of the emergency might be unknown or first for us. We take some action. We observe the outcome. We either continue or we change to combat the changing circumstances. So those two things, not so much hand in hand, but is a fluid way of approaching situations that are new to any of us. Now,
So you could theoretically apply that to
anything
that you're trying to do.
Anything, yeah. And when you then put that into a business sense, you can look at a lot of other mantras or mottos of business and sort of go, oh, that's very similar. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So, how then do I write this book? Get started. Do it. Get started. First page, this is rubbish. Throw it away. How do I know it's rubbish? Because I started and now I've decided, no, this is rubbish. I need to take a different track. So taking action and then modifying it will get you moving and get you're not frozen in the moment.
Yeah, because the fear of making the wrong call
decision
is so debilitating.
Yeah, and it's a delay that you do not need in an emergency.
Not
this
at
is
all.
why it's so critical. And how I teach that, again, not to put the fear of God into participants, and unfortunately now here on YouTube, I'm going to give you the answer to what this one is if ever you're to sit in one of my classes, is, okay, so as a leader of people, the emergency alarms have gone off. Our building is on fire. It's the emergency most people can appreciate. We have an emergency exit here, and we have an emergency exit here. So to my 100 people in the auditorium, which exit do we use? And one sits down and goes, yeah, well, okay, hands up if you think we should use this emergency exit. Some people, yeah, okay. So 20% of you say here. Okay.
Yeah.
All right then. How many say we use this emergency exit here? 20%. Okay, so the other 60% of you,
They're not taking any of them.
you haven't made a decision at all. So let me demonstrate that. You hear the alarms, just picture the alarms, and I'm standing here going, what have I achieved? Everyone goes, oh, nothing. You go, well, we can't afford me to achieve nothing. I'm your leader. This is an emergency. Our lives are at risk. Let me do it again. How are we doing? Everyone goes, no, you're shit. You're not a leader. You go, exactly. So the answer to the question is, which exit do we use? Is yes.
Take the exit.
We use an exit. So I'm going to use this one. Everybody stand up, follow me. We go over to the exit. I open the door, flames, smoke. Holy crap. Choice of two. I got it wrong. Silly me. What are we going to do now?
Maybe hit the other exit.
Exactly. And now how do we know to use that one? Because we made a decision.
Yeah.
It was the wrong decision, but it gave us more information to now make the right decision. So in an emergency, any decision, even the wrong decision, is a good decision, because no decision just allows the emergency to evolve and you to end up in deeper trouble and deeper trouble and deeper trouble, and it may be too late.
And does that come from experience to some degree of trying that kind of method in even daily life of when you have to make a decision? Because I come across it with lots of different things. I'm sure everybody does, where you just don't make the call because it's like you just can't work out what's the right one. And instead of it feeling like a yes to both of them, it feels really binary, like one's right and one's definitely wrong and catastrophic. So it's like you just don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, it's better to move.
It's, if there are consequences of inaction, so
Okay.
a very lightweight thing. Should we do the washing today or tomorrow? I don't know. I'm not really sure what the weather's going to be today. I'm not really sure what's going to be tomorrow. What's the worst outcome of that? Well, your washing sits in the washing basket for a day or two. Who cares? Okay. But in more pressing issues, should I pay the mortgage today when it's due or pay it tomorrow when it's incurred more interest than it's overdue? If I anguish over this, it's going to be tomorrow and I'm going to end up making a late payment and pay extra interest. Again, a minimal sort of example, but putting it into things that we can all appreciate.
The cost of inaction.
So, yeah, there is a cost of inaction, and there's an inherent fear of getting it wrong. And once you can break that barrier of it's okay to be wrong, within reason. If you think you can fly and you jump off the house, I'll tell you now you can't.
So there is some limits.
Yeah. So let's not be stupid about it, but within reason, make a decision, run with it, but then don't be scared to change it. Now, in politics, it's called flip-flopping or backflipping or what have you, but that's politics. It's a whole different world to real life for the rest of us. There is no problem with, like, my door analogies of going, right, guys, I'm the leader, follow me, whoops, okay, clearly this exit's no good, we are now going to this one. That is effectively managing that situation due to changing dynamics and holes in your knowledge. This is where those wheels within the wheels of the recognition prime decision-making come in. You're trying to make a decision under evolving circumstances. You take some time, then the situation's different.
Yeah.
So everything you had sort of considered has now changed. So now you stop over here and go, right, now let's consider what we should do. Well, no, the emergency's moved on. And
then you find yourself with the situation just running away from you, basically.
Exactly.
And you just can't catch up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feels like for the average person, when it comes to trying to deal with that indecision and not knowing, I guess, like which way to choose in that analogy that you're giving, I feel like oftentimes for people it's not about the personal danger that people are concerned about as much as the opinion or the image of making a mistake, like what you're going to look like and how you're going to be judged if you make that error.
Yeah.
I feel like that. Would you find that a lot with people?
I do. Because when we talk about this, there's a session that I teach as part of an emergency management program, and it's leadership under adversity. Now, is that for any particular emergency? No. Is it every particular emergency? Yes. It's, okay, guys, there's some core traits and skills you need if you're going to be the warden or the person in charge under all these different circumstances. We've taught you the procedures or the principles of managing those situations. Now here's how to actually do it.
Yeah.
And the question is, but what if I get it wrong? And I dare say in a social media world where so much is filmed, photographed, critiqued, commented on, TikToked.
Your words go down in history sometimes.
Yeah, it's on Facebook in 5 minutes. Oh, well, we had an emergency at our building and crazy Bob, told us we had to do this and that and go here and do this, and he got it completely wrong. It turned out it was burnt popcorn in the microwave and we didn't need to leave the building at all. Now Bob is scared to make another decision because he's been critiqued in a public forum.
Yeah.
So I do find that's a very ubiquitous problem, not just in emergencies. It's running a business. It's offering up a comment on LinkedIn. You've got to be pretty brave now to have even the most professional comment, because there'll be all sorts of trolls and haters and people with opposite opinions and what have you. So
how do you combat in what you do? Because I guess you're in a position where you're dealing with serious shit. And you're putting out definitive, maybe not definitive, but you're putting out a way it is.
Pretty much
a lot of the time.
I think that comes back to what we were talking about, been there, done that, got the experience to now talk about that. For instance, if you or I spoke to someone from the military who had served in any of the recent events, Afghanistan, Iraq, or something like that, and they were telling us about leading men under fire or how to deal with certain military-esque situations, we wouldn't really critique it because neither you nor I have that background to know any better, so we would take it on face value.
Yeah.
But quite often that advice or that speaking from authority would only be given if we'd asked, and can only come from someone that really knows what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And opinions will vary, but by and large, what's offered to my clients anyway comes from experience. We've seen it work. We get feedback from people. I get emails. Russell, we had an emergency at our building. We had protesters. It turned ugly. We managed it by doing this, this, and this. I'd like to thank you for the training because otherwise that was a new experience and we wouldn't really have known what to do. Now, they're the best emails ever to get. Sadly, I don't get that many. Most people sort of manage an emergency and go, wow, that went well, but don't bother telling me. So it is nice occasionally when I get a little bit of feedback.
Reach out, people.
Yes, please. These shoulders, they're not as big as they used to be. No, just kidding.
I read one of the quotes that you had in your book, which was, if I can remember it, maybe you can pick up the pieces of when I started, but something to do with good judgment.
Oh.
Yeah, what is it? Good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from
poor judgment.
Poor decisions, poor judgment.
It's either judgment or decisions,
Yeah.
Good decisions comes from experience. And experience comes from poor decisions.
Yeah.
Or good judgment comes from experience. And
seems like sometimes
judgment.
There's no way out of that. Like you to develop real skills, to develop real experience.
Exactly. And look, to put that in the more social media world, all of us have read probably multiple articles, slogans, everything. Hey, when I was when I was 40, I wish I knew what I know when I'm 60. And when I was 20, I wish I knew what I was knew when I was 40. And all that sort of introspection of an additional 5 or 10 years of experience. I wish I'd known that years ago, because I, like probably nearly everybody on the planet, look back at some of the things I said and did in my 20s and you go, oh, how embarrassing. I hope nobody really remembers that. And we all like to think we become more experienced, much wiser as we grow older and accumulate more and more experience to make better and better decisions.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
I feel like I still keep facing things. Things still pop up.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like no matter how far through life, I mean, you tell me how far through life you get, shit that you're not expecting continues to pop up.
Yeah.
And I guess this comes back to that framework that you're talking about, how to deal with
Chapter 1
that.
of my second book,
I saw
which is a specific book for predominantly the security industry or the property management industry. It's a book called The Chief Warden's Field Guide, and that is for whoever takes control as the captain of the ship, so to speak, the chief warden of that sporting stadium, that shopping centre. So it's not for the people in the property, it's the person controlling the whole property. And the very first chapter is called Shit Happens. And that's true.
It does.
And in that chapter, I explain to the new reader that you need to be constantly looking at the circumstances of your workplace or whatever it is you're involved in and thinking what could possibly go wrong. And when you think you've figured it all out, there'll be something else.
Just keep on assessing.
Yeah, and essentially that book takes you through all the different skills and all the different circumstances to be the captain of the emergency response and how to interact with the emergency services when they arrive and how to manage in their absence and everything like that. And then finishes with, okay, now you've built all these skills or you've found out the skills that you need to know, but you've still got to sit down and think, what if? What could possibly go wrong?
Don't get too comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not trying to make people paranoid. It's just trying to, the minute you keep going, what next? And I wrote that book during pandemic. And I actually call it out in the end chapter. As I write this final chapter in this book, the world has come to a halt.
Yeah.
And we never, ever thought that what we'd watched in movies in the 80s, 90s and everything would ever really and truly happen. Imagine the world's airline industry stopping.
Yeah.
Everybody staying home the world over.
Did your work change dramatically
Absolutely.
throughout that time?
Yeah, it was astounding. Like, I have a very diverse portfolio of clients. I have regional, I have metropolitan, I have suburban clients, I have retail, I have government buildings, I have sporting stadiums, I have rural workshops and industry. Nothing can absolutely impact the whole of my client base across all those different industries, different locations, and different types of environments.
Yeah.
So, that's good business. And within the space of a week, every one of them phoned me and said, just cancel for the rest of the year.
Really?
Yeah. And you're gobsmacked.
Just cancel for the rest of the year?
Yeah, and
just
that's what I
closing...
said to the first few that rang me. Oh, you mean just postpone the next training session? No, this is going to drag on. Just can everything we've got in the calendar for the rest of the year. And so you're suddenly like...
It's weird because it kind of at the same time seems that your line of work is essential within that time, right?
Yeah. So we are still trying to keep major infrastructure up and running and open for business for when the pandemic ended and we were allowed to return to work. And then as we reached a point where there was staged returnings to work, we were all sort of working remotely and a core contingents were in at that call centre, that data centre and things like that. Employers started to realise, oh, hang on, we're doing the right thing, but we're highly exposed because the contingent of 30 staff that we've got up there on the 25th floor, not one of them is a warden. Not one of them has been trained on what to do in the event of an emergency. And now we think about it, not one of them is a first aider either. And now we come back to OC Health and Safety, which mandates what employers in every state of Australia must abide by or adhere to as far as workplace safety goes. And, of course, for the Victorian OC Health and Safety Act, when it comes to emergencies, very lightweight wording, basically you must have contingencies for emergencies and paths of travel to an emergency exit must be clear. Yeah, thanks for narrowing that down. But fortunately, the springboard of where you go to actually find out, well, how do I do that? How do I ensure that is an Australian standard? It's called emergency planning in facilities.
Yeah, right.
And it basically just sets out the minimum requirements that any employer or workplace, a facility, should have in place to be able to cope with a range of emergencies. And it sort of sets out some common aspects that when an emergency service in Perth or an emergency service here in Melbourne or Darwin turns up to that factory, that cinema or something like that, there's been some basic common procedures to move people away from the emergency. The people are in charge of wearing certain coloured identification that's the same in every state in Australia and everything.
Just streamlining the whole thing.
It streamlines it so that there's some synergy between emergency services and the company involved.
In your opinion, because it's so difficult just from my own perspective, and I don't know if every generation has always felt like this, but maybe it's due to the media presence that we have now, but it seems like catastrophes and crisis events and just crazy shit is happening more and more and faster and to a more intense degree.
Absolutely.
Is that just a trick of perception, or is things getting worse, so to speak?
There is, I think ultimately it's exactly what you've said. It's our perception. And again, it's driven by a confluence of a few things. So again, playing the old man card here. When I was a boy, in Australia there was 12 million people. So we're talking 1970s.
Yeah.
I remember being able to ride my bike around. Dad never ever struggled to find a park. You know, get out of the house, go and kick the football down the park. You know, don't come home till the street lights come on. Because it's simpler times. Yes, there were the odd kidnapping, the odd robbery, the odd car accident and things like that. But when there's only half the population of Australia as today, only half as much happens. And when nobody is instantly filming any and everything that happens, only major prolonged events that a news crew finds out about and visits with a camera or a reporter makes news. The whole process of reporting is slower.
Yeah.
You know, it goes to print and comes out in tomorrow's front page news in the paper, or maybe on the television at 6 p.m. and only 6 p.m. And then, you know, we get a little bit more advanced in the 80s and 90s. You get the 9 p.m. news or the 10 p.m. news, and nowadays we get it streamed 24/7. It's on every social channel.
You get a constant stream of terror.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now what you're actually seeing is compounding the problem is, well, I want you to watch our channel or our news service. You need to be with us because we're on an hour earlier than the competition. Yeah, but we were first. We always go live. Who can you depend on for 24-hour news? It's company or brand X. So with so much competition now, the news needs to get your attention.
Yeah.
So were you interested in the news article the other day that the 5:16 tram to Frankston left Melbourne Central at 5:16 and arrived without incident at Frankston at 6:20?
No, don't
Of course
care.
not. Nothing happened.
care.
Everything was as it should be. It's not news.
Yeah.
And yet that's a good news story. Everyone made it home safely.
Something good
Everything's
happened.
really great.
Yeah.
So, of course, things that are good aren't that newsworthy. Yes, there's a few exceptions to that rule. You know, some benevolent billionaire turns up and says, here's 500 million for a cancer ward at a hospital. We all go, that's a good news story.
Yeah.
And that's terrific.
But for the most part, it's just fear-mongering.
It's fear-mongering
Yeah.
gets eyeballs. Eyeballs gets ratings. Ratings gets our budget renewed.
There's kind of no way out of that, hey?
There is no way out of that.
It's kind of just a symptom of humanity.
And of course, then to amplify this is, I haven't got anything bad to tell today. Make it up.
Yeah. You think that happens?
We're in the age of, okay, how many times now have you seen a reporter? There's been some sort of event, and they use the term, oh, well, you know, I've just arrived and, well, sources say this is a terrorist attack. Yeah, really, sources? Okay, what's that? Oh, well, no one actually saw what happened, so I just made it up. Okay. And then when we actually put that person under the pump and go, well, what sources were? Oh, yeah, well, it's just somebody said they thought that was it. Why? Because that gives the impression of Johnny on the spot, in the know. We were here first. We were reporting on that.
Reputation.
And that is extrapolated. How often now for especially 24-hour news channels, here we have Russell, the emergency expert, offering his opinion on what might happen in the reconstruction of Notre Dame in Paris. Oh, well, they'll probably do this and then they might do that, and then they may actually start by, underpinning the foundations and doing this, that and the other. You go, now, that's not news.
Like none of that's real.
No, this is some guy just coming in and giving you a bit of speculation about what they may or may not do, because we've got to fill time and we've got to make it look like there's information to be had.
And I feel like the problem is, like, for your terrorist example, the average person hears the first part of the story and they go, shit, it's happened. And then if they're not listening consistently from that point, they never find out that it wasn't real. You know, they just hear the first part. So it's just this constant.
Yep. And look, that really, as you say, sells papers, sells airtime and everything like that. So much so that now bringing it back to emergency training, a very, very unusual one that has come up quite a bit is people go, okay, you've done all this training with us, Russell, but what about if there's a terrorist attack? You go, yep. Okay.
Yeah.
What about it? They go, yeah, you know, if there's, what do we do if there's a terrorist attack? You go, well, let me know. What do you mean? Now, I torture them here. You know, a terrorist attack. Can you explain that? What does that mean?
Come up with a scenario.
You know, terrorist. You go, no, I don't know. So they go, well, this guy's an idiot. You go, well, no, because what is terrorism? I go, yeah, you know, guys in balaclavas trying to, you know, blow people up. You go, so you're talking bomb threat, as in a suspicious package, a bomb, or an explosion. So we've got a bomb threat or an explosion as an emergency to respond to.
So it already fits under the systems.
Everybody's emergency manual, cover to cover, is dealing with terrorism because, and why I torture people and try and make them see the silliness of what they're saying, terrorism is why somebody has done something illegal, used an illegal act to coerce a society or segment thereof into changing their ways or their perspective about something that's social, religious, environmental nowadays, or political changes in society. So the bomb threat, the taking of hostages, the random shooting of people, we've seen all these illegal actions done with the advancement of a social, religious, political agenda.
Yeah.
We've also seen them done because of mental health issues or revenge or criminal acts. So the actual answer to people is, okay, so I stab you in the chest. You're walking into work one day with your coffee. I come at you with a knife. I stab you in the chest, but just as I do, I yell a religious slogan. Okay? So now that clearly is a religious-inspired attack, possibly terrorism.
Yeah.
But what's the outcome?
I'm getting stabbed in the chest.
Hang on a sec. We've got an active armed offender with a knife and we've got a medical emergency, someone with a knife in their chest.
Yeah.
Okay? Or you come walking in the building in the morning, you got your coffee, and I go, Dylan, you bastard, you slept with my wife, stab. What have we got? Terrorism? No. Personal aggrievement or, you know, revenge. But you've got an active armed offender with a knife and you've got a medical emergency. So terrorism is the prosecutors and the police's investigation afterthought of whatever their actions are.
But you're just dealing with, like, in the heat of the moment, the why doesn't matter. It's just the what.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. I get pressed by large organisations. You know, there is no chapter in this manual about terrorism.
Because I guess that's what inspires the questions in the first place for a lot of people, isn't it?
Exactly.
They hear it, terrorist, this, whatever.
Yeah. But when you actually say terrorist attack, that isn't actually narrowing it down because it could be a cyber attack in the name of your social, your political, your environmental. Now, we're actually seeing a lot of environmental activists bordering on terrorism, if you want to put this definition to it. Yeah. Causing, using illegal means to cause disruption and try and coerce a society into believing about, well, global warming or whatever other climate agenda they have. Yeah. So, that's a bit of a funny one. Again, we're sort of just playing with definitions and meanings, but.
Well, I mean, I mean, even with the climate change one, right? It can easily fall into the category of it's still a belief system in a lot of ways, unless you're basing it off pure numbers that you've gotten from somewhere. For the most part, most people don't have those facts and numbers.
Correct.
It's a belief like anything else. It's a religion, and that could fall into any other belief system, basically. I feel like there's normally a small number of people who are taking action based on facts, and then there's kind of a lot of people just taking action based off other people taking that action.
Yeah.
Or other people's beliefs a lot of the time. It's pretty crazy, man. It's an extreme environment that you work in. For the average person who doesn't have to think about this stuff on a daily basis, it's pretty crazy to hear about.
Yes, it sounds exciting, but after 30 odd years, there is very few questions or situations that are coming my way that I haven't answered before, seen before, or stumped by.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I don't know, the luxury of age and experience that you suddenly realise perhaps I am the expert in the room.
Yeah.
and that's, I guess, the culmination of everybody's career. I am the expert at mechanics or financial wizardry or Excel or PowerPoint or whatever skills are involved in your vocation or your job. So, yeah.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for coming in and having a chat. It's really good to hear about all this stuff. Where can everybody find you?
Oh, okay, that's actually an easy one. If you're interested in the books that I've written, you can go and read about them and read my blog, russellboon.com. So that's Russell Boon as one word, RUSSELL, Boon, BOON, Noe.com. And you can order a book if that lights your fire from there.
Order a book. It's good. It's a good book.
It's a very easy read. We simplified it to really make it digestible and easy to wade through. It's not full of hours and endless charts of scientific research or anything like that. And if you're a property mogul, sporting stadium, large infrastructure, critical infrastructure, and you're interested in our services, capacity-building.com.au.
Awesome. I'll chuck it all in the description anyway for people. Awesome.
No worries.
Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure.
I appreciate it, man. We'll do it again soon.
Yeah.
Peace.
More wine.
That's it. More wine. See you later, everybody.
Cheers.
Awesome.